This is Sunday Magazine. I'm Brian Hughes. My guest this morning is David Chianese, CEO for Law Enforcement Supporters for Media Accountability, otherwise known as LESMA. Good morning, Mr. Chianese.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fine, sir. Tell us about your organization.
Well, in a nutshell, we are a safety net for law enforcement officials nationwide. We fill in wherever their unions, fraternal organizations, or benevolencies fail to protect them or provide them a service for whatever the reason may be. We have approximately 320,000 members that we affiliate with. We have people that come to us from FOPs, PBAs, supervisors from the rank of sergeant up to chief, as well as the low man on the totem pole, the police officer and the sheriff.
I understand you're a former New York City police officer yourself. Tell me the reason why this organization was founded.
Well, I retired out of the NYPD as a detective, and the reason why I started it ultimately was just trying to adjust back, as crazy as it sounds, adjusting back to civilian life. On my way out of the police department, there were very few answers, even from my union, on the process, how to handle it, going forward, what to do. Even applying for my LEOSA license, which is my license to carry nationwide, granted by the federal government. Couldn't even get information on that. It was a complete disaster. Also having an adjustment dealing with, like I said, civilian life. I was going to become a stay-at-home dad. My wife works full-time, and it is a change. It takes its toll on you. I missed the brotherhood. I missed the adrenaline rush of doing the job. So I partnered up with a couple other people. Originally started as a Facebook group, just chatting and dealing with it and trying to get answers to these questions. And before you knew it, there was 10,000 of us in a matter of a couple of weeks across the nation. And talk became pretty heavy as far as getting together and doing something. And then we were hit with Detective Brian Moore's homicide here in New York City. He was a young kid, the town over from me. I have had run-ins with him sometimes in the morning on my way into work in 7-Eleven, grabbing coffee, morning bagel, whatever. It hit me kind of hard, and that's pretty much where I decided more needs to be done to protect us as a whole, retired and active duty. And I really wanted to try to bridge the community and police. There's a huge misunderstanding between what goes on in law enforcement, what we have to do, why we have to do it. And with the certain rise of certain groups, this Antifa and the Black Lives Matter, pushing their agenda, certain members of the media pushing that agenda that they have and feeding these inaccuracies out there to the public, really started creating a very dangerous situation for the officers. So that's when we decided to take action and form.
This is Sunday Magazine. My guest this morning is David Chianese, CEO for LESMA, Law Enforcement Supporters for Media Accountability. And how would you want to make the media more accountable?
Well, we just, our whole mission is just to get the facts out there for what they are. For example, you have a case there in Pennsylvania with Officer Frank Schultz. He's being charged in regards to a shooting, and he's been being held on murder charges, murder 1 and murder 3, as well as a few other recently added charges. Now, he's been in jail for over a year. We don't, as a group, come forward and say, hey, he's innocent, hey, he's guilty. That's for the court's decision.
You let the system play out and decide.
Oh, absolutely. And we fully support the system and what it is. We're not doing that at all. What we do like to do is, and we're doing it in several key cases now. We're actually assisting with Betty Shelby in Oklahoma. We assisted with Ben Fields in North Carolina. We assisted with Peter Liang out of the NYPD, doing PR work and whatnot. And we'll continue to help officers. And we're focusing now on Frank Schultz and his case out of Carbondale.
Yeah, I was going to just fill in the blanks a little bit because here in northeastern Pennsylvania is where he's from. The Carbondale officers accused of the shooting death of Joseph Molinaro back in February of last year. Now, the Lackawanna County DA claimed that it was an execution and that Schultz may have been drinking prior to the shooting. Is there anything you found out that may fly in the face of that?
Well, yeah. I mean, here's the first thing that I found out. I have common sense, so I can figure it out on my own. Apparently, Shane Scanlon has none. You are talking first things first about a man who rose to his position as DA under very shady terms. His uncle appointing the old ADA to be a judge, and then him getting the spot over much more qualified, longer tenured DAs in the office draws a lot of question as is. But it is what it is. Life is filled with people in every occupation that seem to rise to the top and have absolutely no reason to. It's just the way it is in every field, everywhere you go. I don't care if you're a teacher, a doctor, or a cop. It's in our field as well. There are plenty of people who've managed to stand for absolutely nothing in their lives and somehow become leaders of big organizations, companies, whatever the case may be. But to call an officer, let's not even say an officer, anybody who uses self-defense to go out and say that that is an execution is absolutely asinine. It's dangerous. It's beyond dangerous. You're not just hurting the officer. You're hurting the family of the victim that's shot. Like I said, we won't dare come out and say he's innocent, he's not. Do I have my own personal opinion? Absolutely. But what our bigger issue is getting the information out there. You're talking about an individual who was serving his community, a lot of positive stories about this officer, what he's done. None of it gets reported by the media. You're talking about another individual getting shot who was the furthest thing from being a stand-up member of society. Numerous arrests by numerous officers, twice by the officer involved. And for the district attorney to come out and say it's an execution because he's previously arrested him, when the individual you're talking about that was shot was, sad to say, a ne'er-do-well. I just don't get it. There are, when you go through your life getting, every precinct has them. We had them where I worked. Every precinct I worked in, we knew who they were. Everyone in the town knew who they were. You have families or you have individuals who do nothing but cause damage in the neighborhood. And I don't necessarily mean damage in the sense of breaking things, but they cause some form of injustice upon somebody else. Whether it's committing crime, doing graffiti and causing physical damage, or just being a typical troublemaker. Those individuals exist. And they exist, again, same type of thing. Every neighborhood, every occupation you go to, right? There are cops out there, again, don't do the right thing and are always out there causing problems, and they need to be handled. This is what you're dealing with in this case. He's far from a stellar member of any community out there. He had an interaction with an officer. The interaction went bad. When he lunges at the officer shoots. There is no dispute that he turned and went towards the officer, and there's no dispute that the officer returned fire. But for the DA to turn around and label it an execution, for the DA to use things such as he didn't have his gun belt on, therefore shows intent, is asinine. The officer was off duty. The encounter happened, a skirmish happens in front of his property. He responds. He sees a reason in his best interest, to do his job loyally to the people he serves, to the community he serves, and to the oath he took to follow this individual. He did. At some point, the individual, after numerous times of stop, surrender yourself, he turns on the officer and lunges at the officer. To say it's an execution is insane. The reality is, and the DA clearly has no intent on no idea on what an officer does for a living, and only intent here is political gain with his upcoming first election is to smear this cop, ruin this cop, and show the people, look, I stand up for the law. He's not standing up for anything but his best interests.
I would have to ask you, why is it taken so long for this case really even to come to trial, since it happened in February of last year? It's already the end of March, early April of 2017. What's the wait? Well,
I'm going to tell you what the wait is. Again, it comes down to politics, and it goes. It's not just the case here. We've seen acts like this with Marilyn Mosby in Baltimore, which again we helped do some work with that as well. We saw the same incident, and you see the same incident going on in Chicago with the McDonald's shooting, where the video was held, and Rahm Emanuel promised action. He got his election. The case got swept away. And it wasn't until the DA was up for their election and Rahm Emanuel said, I'm not going to support you, I'm backing a new runner. Then all of a sudden the DA ran to the court and pressured the court to have the video released. The video released, and all hell broke out. They like to use the police officers and the community as a whole as a pawn for their elections, and that's exactly what's going on here. He's dealing with an upcoming election. He knows he's going to be running up against the person who should have got the job and was due for the job before he got it and was hand-selected. And he knows he's going to have a hard fight with that. He's got to make a name for himself. He's got to make his bones. He doesn't really have any. To be quite honest, with moves he's made even in this case, it shows complete incompetence of his job. If you read up on the case, you'll even find out there were motions made by him to prevent the officer from using the self-defense as a police officer, which is granted him by the state of Pennsylvania, which of course was overturned. How could you not allow the defense as an officer when the person's an officer? It's asinine. It's also asinine to claim an intent to kill him was based off of the fact that he didn't have his gun belt on when he was off duty and in civilian clothes. Now, there's no officer out there in the United States guaranteed that can turn around and say, well, if I was off duty and that happened, I'd run in my house and put on my gun belt. At that point, I might as well put on my vest and my boots, and well, that's the case. I might as well put on my entire uniform, then run out and respond to whatever it is.
This is Sunday Magazine. I'm Brian Hughes. My guest this morning is David Chianese, CEO, the Law Enforcement Supporters for Media Accountability, LESMA. We're discussing the case of Carbondale police officer Frank Schultz, accused of the shooting death of Joseph Molinaro in February of last year. I want to ask you on a broader sense of the term. I mean, police shootings have been pretty much all over the news for the last couple of years nationwide. Is it the fact that there are more police shootings than ever before, or is it just the fact that it's being reported more because of a 24-hour news cycle and that there's so many smartphones that are capturing these incidents?
It's definitely it's a mix of things. It is reported more frequently. It's sensationalized way more often. With all these spring up homegrown media sites, like you said, because of video and cell phone video and all that, these stories linger in the news a lot longer. I also do personally feel, as well as many other experts, and I've given plenty of commentary on it throughout the country over the last 2 years, the increase of officers getting shot, officers getting ambushed, officers getting attacked. And by attack, I don't necessarily mean by firearms. Knife-related incidents, physical incidents, they're all on the increase. They're on guard more, the officers. And the reality is, when their life is in danger and they're in fear of their life, they're going to react. You do have a few cases that have come out in the news where officers didn't, and you see officer was beat unconscious, had his gun stolen, and when interviewed, there's plenty of stories out there like that. I didn't want to be a target, or I didn't want to be accused of being a racist, or I didn't want to lose my job. You have the other side of the pendulum where the officers, are very clearly, I'm in fear for my life, and, game on. And I'm going to do what I have to do to go home to my family. And the end game here is that's what they're going to do, as anyone else would. You put them in that situation. The society as a whole has gotten away from this idea of, stop, put your hands up, listen to what the officer says, and address it when it's proper to address it. Not every interaction is going to lead to an arrest. Not every foot pursuit is going to lead to an encounter, an engagement. But if you're going to resist, which, by the way, means not putting your hands behind your back, you're going to entice the situation on your own. It's going to happen. There is no doubt about it. The basic rule is I go home at the end of the day. I have to. I have a family. I have a job to do, and I have people to protect. If you're going to interact with me and you're going to notch it up, I'm going to do what I'm allowed to do, and I'm going to stop it. We are not required by law or anything else to use the same amount of force you're using. We're automatically authorized to use more force than you're using to ensure that the dangerous situation ends quickly. And if it turns out that that's going to have to be the discharge around, it's going to happen. If we have to use a taser and you have a heart attack, it's going to happen. It's not our goal. We don't put on our boots, in the locker room at the beginning of the day hoping this happens. But people do have to understand you're playing a dangerous game with your own life, and best to just leave it at what it is, answer the officer, and move on. Courts will rectify it. There's every department, every agency, even the federal agencies have their own, watchdog groups that watch them. Make a complaint. Or, in reality, reach out to one of these many civilian groups that are out there that do their own watching of it that will help you with appealing these things, fighting these things, and getting bad cops off the street if it's an issue of that. Civilians just need to help out and comply.
Mr. Chianese, where can we find out more information regarding LESMA?
Well, you can find us out online. It's LESMA, LESMA, LESMA.org. You can drop us a line, any questions you have there. It'll give you contact information, and at the same time, we'll be able to respond and send you different links we have to our Facebook page. You could also look us up on Facebook in the search bar, put in LESMA, LESMA, and it'll send you to all our links.
All right, David Chianese, CEO of LESMA, Law Enforcement Supporters for Media Accountability. Appreciate you joining us this morning and sharing this information with us here on Sunday Magazine.